Did you know that chances are you're only getting 25% of the really healthy and important omega-3 fatty acids in your diet, and that there are specific ways that you need to eat in order to hit the targets, the minimum recommended daily targets that are shown to maintain health in healthy people? And we're going to be talking about whether or not we need to even increase that to hit optimal health. So we don't want just minimal health, we want optimal health. Hi, welcome to the Wild Wisdom Show. I'm Dr. Patricia Mills, a medical doctor with a different spin on women's health. I'm a specialist in physical medicine rehabilitation, practicing functional medicine, and I love taking complicated science and breaking it down into easy to understand information and providing you with actionable strategies you can implement for immediate results. And today we're going to be talking about omega-3 fatty acids and how to get enough from your diet for optimal health. And omega-3 fatty acids are a kind of fat that are incorporated into your cell membrane, into the lining of your cell, the skin of your cells, and therefore every single organ in your body. And without enough of them, your body starts using what we'll call crap fat, not the good kind of fat. And that makes it so that your cells are not functioning. So you actually can affect every single organ in your body negatively if you're not getting enough omega-3 fatty acids. So today we want to talk about where can we get them from our diet and exactly how much do we need to eat in order to optimize our health. And so let's go over the two main sources. I like to categorize things so that it's easier to understand. And the very most basic way to explain it is that these come from plants and animals. So plants have fats in them and animals have fats in them, and plants have different kind of fats than animals, which we're going to get into. So for the omega-3 fatty acids, plants have what are called the alpha linoleic acid, ALA, and the animals primarily have DHA and EPA. And omega-3 fatty acids are essential fatty acids. Your body cannot make it. So it either has to take in ALA and change it into DHA and EPA, or you can eat DHA and EPA already converted by animals. So another animal ate the ALA and converted it into DHA and EPA, or in the case of fish, which we'll get to, they directly consume DHA and EPA from things like microalgae. What's important to know is that plants have different needs than animals. So plants have different needs than humans. When we eat plant omega-3 fatty acids in the form of ALA, we have to convert it into DHA and EPA, and that conversion is really low. If I eat 100 molecules of ALA, less than 15% of that will be converted into DHA and EPA. So that's not a very good conversion rate, which means that you have to eat a lot of plants to get the same amount of EPA and DHA as you do for eating animals. And DHA is the very important omega-3 fatty acid in the brain. It's the primary fatty acid omega-3 in the brain. And EPA is found in larger amounts, but still with DHA in other areas of the body. So ALA needs to be converted to EPA and DHA in the human body. Interestingly, the only plant that can make high levels of DHA and EPA, as far as we know, is microalgae in the oceans. And then the phytoplankton eat this specific kind of algae, and then the fish eat the phytoplankton. So fish, which are very well known for being high in EPA and DHA, many supplements of omega-3 fatty acids, omega-3s, are from fish oil, but they can also be from algae oil. And there's a newer kid on the block, and it's called krill oil, which is a member of the crustacean family, very tiny, kind of looks like a shrimp, but krill also means small fry fish. So it's a bit confusing, but essentially it's found in the ocean. That's the nature chain of how we get DHA and EPA primarily. Now, how much of this do we need? And I'm going to really stress this. What I'm talking about right now is the minimum amount in healthy humans, not in people who have disease conditions that, for example, have higher states of inflammation that require more anti-inflammatory omega-3 fatty acids. Omega-3 fatty acids are anti-inflammatory in the body, which is amazing. It's what you want. You want to put out the fires of inflammation. And if you have a disease condition like diabetes, hypertension, cancer, stroke, heart disease, dementia, Alzheimer's, autoimmune conditions, you're going to have higher amounts of inflammation. So these minimum recommended amounts are not what you are targeting, but this is a good place to start in terms of understanding the minimum. And there are various dietary reference intakes that are developed by Food and Nutrition Board of the National Academy of Medicine, and also the National Institutes of Health have an omega-3 fact sheet full of research, which is amazing. They try to use the research to provide you with a minimum amount in a healthy adult or child. They do different age ranges. In the case of omega-3 fatty acids, it's interesting because what they said is they were able to find enough research to be very firm on their recommendations. So they provide what's called an adequate intake, which is an estimate assumed to ensure nutritional adequacy. So I would take this as a minimum. So as a minimum, the daily intake of EPA and DHA should be between 250 milligrams to 500 milligrams. And I'm going to go deep into what that means in terms of what you're eating. But what I want you to know is that you may think you're getting enough omega-3 fatty acids from your diet, but there was this very interesting study done over 5 years that looked at the intake of what people were having, and what they found on analysis, and this is in North America, the average person was getting 18 milligrams of EPA per day and 50 milligrams of DHA per day, which adds up to about 68 milligrams versus the 250 to 500 milligrams. So chances are that unless you're being very intentional about this, and I can tell you that before I got intentional about this, I was not consuming enough. So this is something that's really worth paying attention to. So I like to provide motivation for understanding the information. So omega-3, DHA, and EPA are found in the highest amounts in the brain, in the retina, which is what provides vision at the back of the eye. Macular degeneration is a big problem that's coming up in our society. And there could be this link between a low omega-3 fatty acid intake, and you don't want to lose your vision. And omega-3, DHA, and EPA have been found to be lowest in people with dementia and Alzheimer's disease. That's the brain connection. It's also been shown to help prevent heart disease in some studies, and it's been shown to help reduce the risk of a second heart attack if you've had a first one because of the anti-inflammatory effects. It actually stimulates hair growth, and I've studied that very specifically, which is kind of cool. It minimizes muscle loss and improves muscle gain, in particular if you couple it with strength training, and we talked about the anti-inflammatory effects. So what we want to do then is hit that minimum daily requirement. If you were to eat 2 servings of 4 ounces of fatty fish per week, that would average out to about 250 milligrams of EPA and DHA a day. So that's at the very lower end of it. The range was 250 to 500. So then you're looking at 4 servings of 4 ounces of fatty fish as a minimum. Oh, thank you. There's a Facebook user saying such great information, life-changing. I appreciate that. Keep it coming. I love the positive comments. Thank you. So we have this, minimum threshold of 2 to 4 servings of 4 ounces of fish per week to get that 250 to 500 milligram average per day. However, there was this super interesting meta-analysis, which is a review of multiple studies. That's what a meta-analysis means. And then they combine the statistical data and analyze that. And they showed that for every additional serving of fish per week, there was a significant decrease in the risk of dementia and Alzheimer's disease. I don't know if you've heard about the blue zones. The blue zones are areas in the world where they have the highest concentrations of centenarians, people living over the age of 100. And one of these blue zones is the Okinawa, and they eat a lot of fish. And so there are societies and cultures where fish is a daily menu item. And then the question becomes, well, okay, should I eat fish 2 to 3 times a day? How much is too much? And don't worry, if you're vegetarian or vegan, I'm going to get into how you need to eat to hit your targets very specifically as well. So in terms of toxicity of omega-3 fatty acids, for eating, there is no known toxicity for omega-3 fatty acids. For supplements, that's another story. But for eating, there isn't. However, the FDA recommends no more than 3 grams of EPA and DHA per day, and no more than 2 grams of that should be from a supplement, with the caveat that this is for healthy individuals. So if you are very healthy and you have no deficiencies in omega-3 fatty acids, you have not been diagnosed with any disease condition, and your blood work is looking great, your cholesterol and everything is looking great. By the way, when you eat oils from fish in the form of omega-3s, your cholesterol does not go up, your triglycerides do not go up, the fat content in your muscles and in your body does not go up, because the omega-3 fatty acids are not the kind of fat that gets stored as fat. I feel like I really need to shout this from the rooftops. It's the kind of fat that your body uses to make your brain, and your body uses to make your cells, your hair, your muscle, your heart, your arteries, your liver, your kidneys. So it's a building block fatty acid. It's not a going into your fat stores fat. So and organizations like the FDA look at the total amount of fat you should have per day. I want you to understand that omega-3 fatty acids do not count in that category. And the FDA even clearly states that. Having said that, they do have a limit. And one of the considerations, it's not something they've said, but something I think about, is the mercury content in fatty fish. There is mercury in our fish. And the fish that live the longest, like tuna, they have the highest content in mercury because they've been around longer to ingest it. There's a group of fish, which the acronym is SMASH, SMASH, which stands for salmon, mackerel, anchovies, sardines, and herring. These are smaller fish, they live less long, and they have lower amounts of mercury. Whether or not mercury is a real concern, why don't we just play it safe? And we're going to analyze the omega-3 fatty acid content in SMASH fish. So if we look at 3 ounces of fish, and I'm saying 3 ounces because that's what's been analyzed in the research, so I'm using that as the amount. If you take 3 ounces of wild salmon, it's 1.57 grams, which is 1,570 milligrams. And remember, the maximum daily dose is around 3 grams. So you would be okay having 2 servings of salmon a day if you wanted to. Not that you should. I think you should switch it up. I think the body likes varieties. Anchovies are 1.43 grams, mackerel 1.02 grams, sardines 1.19 grams, and herrings a whopping dose of 1.71 grams a day. So in my morning breakfast, because I always add protein to my breakfast for better muscle growth, better blood sugar control, better satisfaction after my breakfast, I eat either a serving of herring or a serving of salmon, and I buy really good quality wild caught salmon and herring, and that's what I use. And I make sure that they're not packed in any weird ingredients. It's either in olive oil or saltwater brine. So I do a serving of that a day. So I'm hitting at least half of my maximum daily allowance using that 3 grams per day. And then sometimes I'll even have an additional fish at dinner time, but there's other ways to get omega-3 fatty acids. They're not as effective as fish, but there's been a couple of interesting studies now comparing the omega-3 fatty acid content in beef that's raised grass-fed and finished versus conventionally raised, which is grass-fed, but then feedlot finished. So they are fed grass and pastured for a bit of their life, but then the conventional group goes into these very tiny restricted small lots and are force-fed grains to increase their fatty content to get that kind of marbled look. And it does actually change the nutritional content of that meat for the worse. It has lower amounts of omega-3 fatty acids compared to their cousins that have been allowed to stay out in pasture for their full lives. They're grass finished. They have higher amounts. Now, the difference isn't huge. For every 3 ounces, you might get 40 milligrams from the conventionally raised to around 100 milligrams from the grass-fed. But you could see that if you had a 3-ounce serving of grass-fed meat, plus your fish, plus what we're going to cover, you can start to bump up your omega-3 fatty acid intake quite significantly. 1 cooked egg from the yolk gets about 30 milligrams of DHA EPA. Now, every food has a different ratio. Some have more DHA and less EPA and vice versa. I'm giving you combined amounts. Let's say you develop a specific condition related to the brain that you want to increase your DHA content because that's the primary omega-3 in the brain, like with dementia and Alzheimer's. Then you're going to be looking into which of the foods have the highest DHA content or supplementing with DHA. So for example, if I were to have in a day 6 ounces of grass-finished beef and 2 eggs per day. That's around 250 milligrams. So you can see it's hard to hit your targets if you're not eating fish, right? So if you don't eat fish, you may need to supplement, is basically the point. You're going to be eating a lot of beef, a lot of eggs. But what about plants? Plant sources are interesting because there actually are values of minimum intakes for ALA, the alpha linoleic acid from plants. And what they found is it's about 1,100 milligrams in healthy women per day. And that need goes up when you're pregnant and when you're lactating. Same with omega, EPA, DHA. Now, remember, the EPA DHA requirements were 250 to 500. The ALA is higher, again, because of that conversion, right? The ALA needs to turn into EPA and DHA. So I would argue actually that the need is much higher than this adequate intake statement, but this, again, it's what's the minimum intake. So for a healthy woman, 1.1 grams, for healthy men, 1.6 grams. And if you're pregnant or lactating, somewhere in between, not for disease states. Disease states need different requirements, they need more. So let's look at keeping in mind the 1.1 gram in women per day, up to 1.6 in men. If you take just 1 whole tablespoon of the flax seeds, you get 2.35 grams. So that's pretty good that you would meet your minimum requirements. But remember, we were talking about EPA and DHA, 250 being the minimum. And then we even talked about adding up to maybe getting to the upper limit of 3 grams. So if you're wanting to do an equivalent upwards intake of ALA, you would have to eat so much flaxseed, right? So the nice thing is that flaxseed oil, 1 tablespoon is 7.26 grams. So there you're starting to get into higher levels. Flaxseed oil is a very delicate oil. If you do buy it, you want it to be expeller pressed, which means it was mechanically compressed and not chemically extracted oil. You don't want the chemicals in the oil like the hexane. And it has to be kept in a very dark bottle in the fridge. If I'm going to have it, I put it in the fridge, and it has to be fresh. You have to throw it out after a certain amount of time because it goes rancid. It oxidizes very quickly. That's something you really have to pay attention to, because otherwise you're going to be eating oxidized flaxseed oil, which is not good. Yuck. And then if you go down the line, chia seeds, 1 ounce, I couldn't find a tablespoon equivalent, but 1 ounce is 5.06 grams. Black walnuts, 1 ounce is 0.76 grams, but English walnuts, 1 ounce is 2.57 grams. So you can see that in nuts, there's varying amounts, and you can look up and see your favorite nuts and seeds, how much you're getting. Edamame was the highest legume or bean, and half a cup was 0.28 grams. So you could see that it's really tough to get enough omega-3s if you're just eating beans. You have to incorporate very intentionally things like flaxseed oil, flax seeds, chia seeds. And what I recommend is, because they are seeds, they have a lot of anti-nutrients, which are the plant chemicals that Mother Nature puts into her seeds to protect them from being overeaten in nature by things like insects. We're not insects, but at this dose, we're eating a lot of this. So we have to consider the anti-nutrients like phytic acid and lectins and saponins and those things. You should never buy ground up flaxseed and eat that, because chances are by the time you buy it, or within a few days of opening the bag, it's gone rancid. Flaxseed is a very delicate oil, and if you grind it up, you have to consume it that day. So I have a coffee grinder that I use just for seeds, and I grind my flaxseed. And then what you do is you put it in a little bit of water and just let it soak. So you grind it, let's say at the nighttime, put in a little bit of water, let it soak. And the next day you can add it to your porridge or to your meals or drinks. Or with chia seeds, it's very popular to do the overnight soaking. And that's good because the soaking of the flax seeds or the chia seeds is what deactivates these anti-nutrients and brings the content of that down. And again, I would recommend rotating things out. I would switch between flax seeds and chia seeds and look up different seeds and rotate through them and incorporate that flaxseed oil. It's not ideal to have flaxseed oil every day. It does have other considerations that limit your ability to use it daily if you're thinking about optimal health, but every other day would be fine. And so as you can see, it gets challenging to hit your targets as a vegan, especially. So for the vegans and some vegetarians, you'd be looking at the algae oil as your option to make sure that you're hitting your amounts. Vegans and vegetarians who do not hit their targets for omega-3 start running into issues as they age. In particular, the skin, you can get like rough, scaly skin, dermatitis. That's the visible signs of deficiency in omega-3 fatty acids. But internally, your brain, you might start to get a little bit of brain fog, a little bit of cognitive impairment. And it's not just for vegans and vegetarians. As I mentioned before, even the average omnivore is not getting enough of it because they're not intentionally incorporating enough high sources of omega-3 fatty acids like fish, for example. And again, balancing that out with the consideration of contaminants from the environment, which are unfortunate but true in things like fish. So doing the smash low mercury fish is one way to go as well. Remember that omega-3 requirements, they depend on genetics, nutritional status, and disease-specific considerations. I have a Facebook user saying, yikes, I buy the ground flaxseed. Do you buy the whole flaxseed, then grind it? I use the powder. Thank you for asking this question. So yes, I would recommend no longer buying the ground flaxseed powder. Buy the whole flaxseed. And then what you do is once you open the bag, you're going to take out whatever you need for that day, 1 tablespoon or 2 tablespoons of flaxseed, and you're going to grind it in the little coffee grinder that you buy specifically just for that. You grind the amount that you need for that day or the next day. Then you put your bag of flax seeds that is now open in the freezer. And so these are ways to allow yourself to buy these in bulk, right? Because once oxygen hits the flaxseed, it starts to oxidize. And when you grind it, opens up the internal contents and it really oxidizes with the air. And oxidation is like if you take a bite out of an apple, the inner white part starts to turn brown very quickly. That's oxidation, and that's what's happening to your flaxseed. So I would make this switch, and it is an important one to make for your health. So thank you for asking the question. Absolutely, I would agree with that. Okay, so if you're someone who has a disease condition and you're looking at this saying, well, okay, first I got to work on meeting my minimal requirements. Now, should I be taking even more? And there is research in these conditions and more, such as allergy, eczema, the dermatitis I mentioned, asthma, rheumatoid arthritis, inflammatory bowel disease, multiple sclerosis, depression. There's actually some very interesting research in depression and omega-3s as a treatment for depression, mild and early stages of dementia, Alzheimer's disease. We're going to talk more in detail, but if you already have very severe Alzheimer's disease, it's just too late for omega-3s to make a big difference. But if it's mild, early stages, it can. And secondary prevention of heart attacks and death from heart attacks. Research has been done on this and shown to be helpful. And also there's more research coming out on hypertension and hypertriglyceridemia. So if you have high cholesterol, high triglycerides, as I mentioned before, this is a different kind of fat. And some research shows that it decreases the bad fat, which is amazing. Maybe because it makes your liver function better because your liver now has better building blocks for being made. Who knows? But one of the hypotheses for that effect is decreased inflammation through the omega-3 fatty acid pathway. When you have decreased inflammation in the body, your body makes less cholesterol to deal with the inflammation. Yes, eggs are high in cholesterol, but when you eat that cholesterol, your body breaks it down into its building blocks and then distributes it for use in the body. Your body will then take those building blocks and make cholesterol if it is being inflamed by something else that you're doing. Not eating the egg, which is healthful, but eating the ultra-processed foods, eating too much sugar, that kind of thing, right? Don't be afraid of eating sources of omega-3 fatty acids because you're worried about high cholesterol or high fat. That really should not be a limiting factor at all, okay? Obviously, don't overdo it. Just keep everything in moderation and you should be okay. And good quality grass-finished is better than conventional beef, for sure. So in summary, omega-3 fatty acids are an essential building block of the body that we need to get from the diet for health maintenance, at least. And it can be very difficult for vegetarians and vegans to get enough. They need to be intentional. But even omnivores and pescatarians may not be getting enough, depending on if you're only eating the 2 servings a week, you might be getting enough, but maybe you might be hitting that minimum requirement of 250 milligrams. But as I showed before, adding more servings can actually be protective against dementia and Alzheimer's. If you like this episode, if you're watching this on YouTube or on your favorite podcast, please leave a comment, share, subscribe. This is how we get the word out. This is how we help other people. Sharing is caring. And I look forward to seeing you again. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, evening, or night, depending on when you catch this. Bye.